Hello and welcome to an episode of Johnsequitur that is probably more specifically for people from around where I live than for people who, watch it from other areas, I guess. Specifically, I know I have some viewers in Boston. And I know that people in Boston in 2003 had a lot more heartache with their baseball teams than people in Pittsburgh ever did. For 86 years, they waited to win a World Series. And that number is very real and very scary. Because I don't think that a lot of people my age will live to see 86. And I don't think that's enough time for the Pittsburgh Pirates to win a World Series. During the time that Boston was bad, they were occasionally making the playoffs. Their heartache came in epic playoff series. You have to excuse me for wearing this blanket, by the way. It's fucking freezing cold down here today. Didn't get the heater on fast enough. But, yeah. The Red Sox had the resources, the owners, the money to compete in a league where there was no salary cap. So if they couldn't catch the Yankees, they could at least, for a while, keep pace with them. For my entire childhood, as far back as I can remember, the Pirates were bad. Yeah, in the early 90s they were good, but I was 6, 7 years old. I don't remember that at all. I don't remember Barry Bonds, or Randy Van Slyke, or any of those people. I know who they are. I've seen the highlights because I live in the age of YouTube, and it's kind of sad watching it even though I didn't even know them back then. But, as many of you know, that sent the Pirates into 20 straight losing seasons. Not just missing the playoffs, not like 500 here and there. 20 straight losing seasons. Now, I didn't pick up on these guys until like 1997. By then I was like 12 years old. And in 1997, they were close. As close as they would get during that stretch. They finished 79 and 83. And they almost won the division with that shitty record. But they lost out to... It doesn't matter who they lost it to. Houston, probably. And after that, management thought they were only a couple pieces away with a 79 and 83 record. That didn't work. So after a couple different ownership changes and GM changes, we came across the era of Neil Huntington, Bob Nutting, and Frank Coonley, the guy who got the DUI. There was a year where they went 56 and 106 or something absurd like that, 58 and 104. I don't remember what it was, but it was 2010, I want to say. And I started a book called A Year in the Life of a Pirates Fan, where I was asking all these people, and I got to know a lot of people. Some of you might be those people, Mike Schaefer and a couple other people who were either working for the Pirates or, went to a lot of the games. And they all seemed resigned to this idea that we had to slowly, through the process of many years, build up to a competitor. And once we got there, we could really splurge and build a winner. So that particular year, Andrew McCutchen had already been up for a year. We brought up Pedro Alvarez, Neil Walker, a bunch of guys like that. And the team was terrible. They were one of the worst road teams of all time. They won 40 out of 41 games at home. Or 40 out of 81. They almost went 500 at home. And I went to a lot of those games because back then you could pretend you had a Giant Eagle Advantage card and they'd accept that you probably had one somewhere and you forgot it. And you could get into the park for like $4. And they won a lot of those games and it was fun for me. And my favorite player back then was Garrett Jones. This is his autographed ball. Notice his first name. Notice my kid's first name. It's not a coincidence. I love this fucking team. I really did. And I was convinced by people around me that this team was headed in the right direction. And they were. In 2011, under the management of Clint Hurdle, the team was in first place in July. I'd never seen a first place baseball team before. I grew up watching the worst baseball you can imagine. It was awful. But this team, all of a sudden, was beating other teams. They beat the Red Sox in an interleague series. I remember that being the biggest fucking deal that had happened to the Pirates in forever. But they collapsed. They weren't ready yet. The next year, they were even fucking better. And with a month left in the season, they were in first place in the NL Central. And they fell the fuck apart. So, the third time that this happened, nobody believed that they were good enough. Why should they? It had been 20 years. We had these 2 times where we had like some of the most historic collapses ever. But somehow they pulled it off. I'm not 100% sure, because I had to work midnights and it was torturous for me, because I had dreams growing up of like walking down the streets of Pittsburgh and people outside freaking out because it was a playoff game, and oh my god, a real playoff game? A real baseball playoff game? Wow! Yeah. For those of you who don't know, one playoff game was amazing. The idea of having a playoff game at home, unthinkable. But they did it. In 2013, they did it. That was one of the best years of my life. My kid was born. I moved into a house, an actual house, and the Pirates made the playoffs. And I got off a midnight shift. Everything was great. The Pirates went into that wild card game against the Reds, and they beat them. They were going to have a real playoff series. I didn't even know what that meant. It didn't register to me. It was amazing. And then they had the Cardinals down 2-1 at home, and they could close it out and go to the NLCS. It was awesome. It was so amazing. But it's okay. Everybody's fine. This team's good. They pushed the Cardinals to the brink. They're coming again. They're going to be there again. And they were. As a wild card team, once again at the deadline, with a chance to make this team really make a push, the GM did not enough. And they had to face Madison Bumgarner in a 1-game playoff. They got throttled. And I felt this weird pit in my stomach that I'd never felt with sports before. Of, like I'd been wasting my time. Like a large portion of my life had been dedicated to something that didn't matter. But I shook it off. I was like, it's fine, John. This is a good team. You're going to see a World Series. The next year, they got to the deadline again. Real close to first place again. And again, they did nothing. Because they didn't want to give away the people in their minor league system. Okay. They're still in, they're still in distance of first place. They can overtake the Cardinals, who beat them 11-1 to win the division. And then you look and you see what's happening with the team that they're going to have to play in the wild card game. It's the Cubs. Jake Arrieta having this insane season. And all you can do for the last 2 weeks of a 162-game season is just go, I hope he gets hurt. I hope an injury happens to this guy, because otherwise, here we go again. And sure enough, they lost 4-0. Another wild card game where they couldn't score any runs. It got so bad, they decided to hit Arrieta and then try to injure him in a fight. And then I realized, well, you're an asshole, John, because this is not cool what you're seeing. You could see them fighting the Cubs, but not really playing good baseball. And it kind of felt like the writing was on the wall. And it was. For the next 2 years, The team was back to what they were basically throughout my entire childhood. They weren't good. And then in the offseason this year, they traded McCutchen, who hadn't had very good years recently, and Garrett Cole, who also hadn't had very good years recently, for basically nothing. Effectively leaving what was the only successful baseball team I've ever seen or rooted for gutted. Now, they weren't putting up great numbers. McCutchen was, during this little streak that they had, an NL MVP. And that was neat. I remember when Freddie Sanchez won the batting title for a terrible 2006 team. But this was different. McCutchen was the best entire player in all of the National League. During this time, the Red Sox won 3 World Series, and even the Cubs, with their curse, managed to win one. They did this by developing young talent like the Pirates did, developing it correctly, which they did not, and then supplementing it with good players, using money, which the Pirates don't have. Now, I don't like to say that because I'm pretty sure they do have it, but they don't want to use it, and they don't want to trade their prospects away. Unless trading their prospects away means that they can shed the salary of a veteran pitcher. Just look up the Francisco Liriano trade. That is disgraceful. This team would not trade their prospects to help a good team, but would trade their prospects with an expensive arm to get salary relief? Salary relief? You don't spend any money on salary. What the f... When I hear what the free agency market is going to look like from year to year, the same 6 or 7 teams always pop up as possible destinations for the top free agents. I've never known what it's like to have my favorite team brought up in that conversation. Ever. For instance, this year, Gio Stanton, whatever his name is, from the Marlins. He was obviously leaving the Marlins, and there were all kinds of destinations he could end up. But I mean, obviously, he was going to New York because Jeter runs the Marlins now, and he was from the Yankees, and blah blah blah. But there were other teams that were in the running for him. The Pirates weren't. Why? Because they can't pay him. Could they pay him if the league was capped? Huh. There's a lot of things in life that aren't fair. In fact, I'm pretty sure all of life is not fair. Fair is imaginary. It doesn't exist. The New England Patriots are proof that fairness, just especially in such a pointless arena as sports, it doesn't exist. But my mom used to say that to me. She said life's not fair, and I would retort with, then make it fair. Do everything you can to make it fair. If I were one of the owners of a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, a team who has no resources, no ability to develop their own players, that's why Pedro Alvarez failed. That's why some of these other guys fail too, like Jamison Taillon. They can't develop them. If other teams can, and the Pirates can't, and they don't have the money to compete for free agents in an uncapped league, then don't you think that maybe if you owned that team and you cared that they won, that you would talk to the commissioner and be like, we need to cap this thing? If you're a player on one of these teams, don't you think you want to bring it up to the union that we need to cap this league? Now, I know that it's possible that if you cap the league, you don't make the $200 million in 10 years. The Mets pay Bobby Bonilla about $1 million every single year to not play. That's how messed up these contracts are. He hasn't played for them in forever. He still gets paid. If this was a capped league, then the Mets would suffer for this. But they have plenty of money. If the Pirates did something like this, it would it would screw them over for a long, long time. That $1 million is precious, precious money to them. Baseball is run by dinosaurs. It's 100% run by dinosaurs. Proof of this is that everybody's like, well, it's always been uncapped, so why would we cap it now? Just like, oh, well, the DL is this, and oh, the tradition that, and dur. Baseball refuses to adapt with the times. And as they do, things like the Pirates, who have been around since 1887, will slowly die. The sport will continue. The Yankees, Red Sox, and Cubs, and the Dodgers, who will show up and not do anything with their insane payroll, will continue to dominate. And will be expected to show up to games and support what exactly? Those of you from other cities, we have the best ballpark. I've been to a bunch. I've been to Wrigley Field. I've seen Fenway. I've seen a lot of different places. I saw the one in Cleveland. I saw Jacobs Field before they got a new one. These fields are pretty nice. PNC Park is incredible. And they know it. They know it. They know we think it's incredible. And they know that just because the baseball team is terrible doesn't mean that we won't show up. And because they know that, and because there's no salary cap in baseball, I am never going to see a Pittsburgh Pirates World Series. Never. Now, does that make me want to get emotionally invested for how many months? 8 or 9 months? There are more important things in the world than sports. I know that. But I am a Pirates fan. And I didn't watch a single game last year. I didn't go. The only thing I did was go on Buck's dugout to see what the people on there were saying. It's run by a guy named Charlie who coincidentally made a book about being a Pirate fan after I interviewed him for my book about being a Pirate fan. Thanks, Charlie. Hope you make a lot of money on that. Anyway, I couldn't go near it. And it turns out I missed them trading away prospects to help relieve salary. I missed them giving away pitchers to go to a winning team and then somebody else trading them to get pieces. And then they gave extensions to the GM and the manager, Clint Hurdle, who admittedly, when he came in for John Russell, made this team better. But I can't blame him. And I can't blame the players. Because you go out and you do what you can. But the Pirates can't do much. And they're never given the help they need to do more. So for this generation that grew up and watched the Red Sox win 3 World Series, or Cubs fans who got to see them win a World Series, look at me and tell me about your pain. You weren't alive for those 86 years, or those 90 years, or whatever. But I will be. And I don't think I want to spend it watching this team.